There's something wired deep into us, something ancient and undeniable. When we see someone we care about slipping under the surface, whether that's emotionally, mentally, or even physically, our first instinct is to jump in after them. We feel that surge of urgency, that sense that it is our duty to save them, no matter the cost. That's what I call the rescue instinct, and make no mistake, it's not a weakness. It's one of the noblest aspects of human nature. It's what has allowed communities to survive, families to endure, and societies to flourish. Without that instinct, without that impulse to reach out when someone is in danger, humanity wouldn't have made it very far. But here's the complication. Instincts are powerful, and they don't always discriminate between when it's wise to act and when it's reckless. The rescue instinct tells you, get in there, save them now. It doesn't stop to consider, do I actually have the strength, the resources, the stability to pull this person out without being dragged under myself? And that's where the tragedy begins. Because so often, in our desperation to help, we dive in head first without realizing that sometimes we are swimming straight into waters that will overwhelm us. Think about it like this. Imagine someone is thrashing in deep water, drowning. You leap in to pull them out, but you've never learned how to swim properly. They're panicking, grabbing onto you with all their force, pulling you down with them. In trying to save them, you both end up sinking. That's not heroism, that's tragedy. And yet, we repeat this scenario all the time in our relationships, in our families, in our workplaces. We see someone spiraling, and instead of pausing to assess what's needed, instead of making sure we're steady ourselves, we leap into their storm. And more often than not, the storm consumes both people. Why does this happen? Because we confuse compassion with self-erasure. We think love means giving everything, even when it empties us. But that's not sustainable, and it's not truly loving either. Real love is not blind sacrifice. Real love requires wisdom. It requires the courage to ask, if I step into this situation, will I actually be able to help? Or will I just add another person to the pile of suffering? The rescue instinct must be disciplined, directed, matured. Otherwise, it becomes dangerous. It's like fire. Fire in the hearth can warm your home. Fire left unchecked can burn it to the ground. Compassion is the same way. When guided by discernment, it saves lives. When it's unbounded and impulsive, it destroys them. We need to learn to channel that instinct through strength and stability first, to cultivate ourselves so we aren't leaping into rivers without knowing how to swim. This doesn't mean turning your back on people who are struggling. It means refusing to mistake recklessness for virtue. It means strengthening yourself so you can actually be of service when it matters most. Because the truth is, you cannot rescue anyone from a position of weakness. You can only rescue from a position of strength. And so, when you feel that instinct rise up, the urge to leap into someone else's chaos, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, am I equipped to enter this storm without being destroyed by it? Can I throw a rope from the shore instead of diving into the waves? Sometimes the most compassionate act is not to plunge in blindly, but to hold your ground firmly, so that when they reach for you, you are unshakable. That is the paradox of the rescue instinct. It feels like self-sacrifice, but it's really about responsibility. Responsibility to others, yes, but also responsibility to yourself. Because if you allow yourself to drown in every rescue attempt, you won't be around to save anyone at all. So remember this, the impulse to save is noble, but nobility without wisdom can become destruction. Don't let your instinct to rescue become the very thing that pulls you under. Strength first, then compassion. Only then can your rescue be real. You've probably heard the instructions they give on airplanes. They say if the cabin loses pressure and the oxygen masks drop down, put yours on first before helping anyone else. And every time people chuckle because it feels selfish. How could I possibly put my own mask on before helping my child, or my spouse, or the person next to me? But the airlines repeat that line over and over because it's not just a safety precaution. It's a fundamental truth about life. If you pass out trying to help, you're no help at all. Now think about that for a moment. How often do we do the exact opposite in our everyday lives? How often do we give and give and give until there's nothing left? We say, I'll get to myself later, or I'll rest when they're okay, or I'll heal once they've healed. And so we run ourselves ragged, convincing ourselves that it's noble. But it isn't noble. It's a subtle form of self-destruction. You can't breathe for someone else if you've already suffocated, and here's the uncomfortable part. Sometimes people resent you for putting your own mask on first. They'll call you selfish or distant or uncaring. But that's because many of us have been conditioned to equate self-care with selfishness. We were taught that love always means sacrifice, that a good person always empties themselves for the sake of others. That's wrong. A depleted person is not capable of deep, consistent love. A starved soul cannot nourish anyone else. The mask principle forces you to acknowledge your limitations, and that's difficult, because most of us want to believe we're limitless. We want to believe we can take on everyone's burdens and still carry our own. But the truth is, there's only so much air in your lungs, only so much energy in your body, only so much stability in your mind. If you don't secure those things first, your attempts to help others will collapse under the weight of exhaustion. It's not about abandoning people in need. It's about becoming the kind of person who has enough strength to make a lasting difference. If you've taken care of yourself, you can show up fully when it counts. You can step into someone else's chaos without being overwhelmed by it. You can offer help that doesn't come with resentment or bitterness or hidden cost. Because your help will come from a place of abundance, not depletion. Think of it like a tree. A tree doesn't say, I'll give shade before I take in sunlight. No, it absorbs the sun, the rain, the nutrients from the soil. It grows strong, and because of its strength, it can offer shade, fruit, and shelter. That's what it means to put your own mask on first. It's not selfish, it's preparation. It's the foundation for every act of real generosity. And yes, sometimes that means saying no. Sometimes that means stepping back, even when everything in you wants to rush in. Sometimes it means disappointing people who want more from you than you can give. But every no that protects your well-being is really a yes to something greater. A yes to longevity, to resilience, to being there tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. So don't fall for the illusion that the fastest way to save someone is to throw away your own breath. Don't mistake martyrdom for love. The world doesn't need more doubt, broken rescuers. The world needs strong, steady people who can keep showing up again and again. If the mask falls, put yours on first. Because only when you can breathe, only when you are steady, only when your life is secure, will you have the strength to save anyone else. And that is the kind of help that lasts. There is a deep danger hidden in the idea of endless sacrifice. On the surface, it sounds virtuous. Give everything for others, pour yourself out without reserve, make yourself small so that others can be lifted up, and society praises it. People will applaud you when you sacrifice your time, your health, even your peace of mind, all for the sake of others. But what no one tells you is the cost, because every sacrifice leaves a mark, and when you give too much for too long without replenishing yourself, the debt eventually comes due. At first, over-sacrifice disguises itself as strength. You think, I can handle this, I'll carry their burden and mine, I'll take one more step, push a little harder, and everything will be fine. But slowly, without realizing it, you begin to hollow out. You start losing sleep, your patience wears thin, resentment builds in the corners of your heart. You smile while you're exhausted. You agree to things you don't have the capacity for. You push yourself past every warning sign your body and mind are screaming at you. And still you convince yourself it's noble. The truth is, over-sacrifice doesn't just harm you. It harms the very people you think you're helping, because eventually you snap, you burn out, you collapse under the weight you've been carrying. And when that happens, not only are you unable to help anyone else, but often the relationships themselves are damaged. Your resentment leaks out, your exhaustion turns into bitterness, and the people you love feel the fallout. What started as an act of compassion becomes a seed of destruction. Consider how many parents, partners, or friends fall into this trap. They give and give until there is nothing left, and then they wonder why they feel invisible, unappreciated, and broken. It's not because their love wasn't real, it was. It's because they misunderstood the nature of love. Love requires boundaries. Love requires strength. Love cannot demand that you destroy yourself for its sake. That's not love. That's martyrdom. And martyrdom, if chosen recklessly, corrodes the soul. There's another cost to over-sacrifice that's even more subtle. You rob people of the chance to grow. When you carry someone endlessly, when you sacrifice all of yourself to shield them from struggle, you deny them the opportunity to face their own responsibility. You weaken them in the process of trying to protect them. It feels loving, but it's not. It's indulgence dressed as care. True care sometimes means letting people feel the weight of their own actions. It means saying, I can walk beside you, but I cannot walk for you. This is why the cost of over-sacrifice is so tragic. It doesn't just drain the giver, it stunts the receiver. It creates dependency where there should be growth, bitterness where there should be trust, and exhaustion where there should be joy. That's not the life you were meant to live. So what's the alternative? It's to recognize that your life has limits and that protecting those limits is not selfish. It's essential. It's to understand that every act of self-preservation strengthens your ability to give meaningfully tomorrow. It's to realize that real love is not about sacrificing yourself into oblivion, but about showing up consistently with strength, clarity, and honesty. Sacrifice, in its right place, is beautiful. It is necessary. There will be times when you give up something valuable for the sake of someone you love, and that is good. But sacrifice must be sustainable. If it costs you your sanity, your health, or your very sense of self, then it is no longer love. It is destruction disguised as virtue. And so, you must decide, will you burn yourself out in the name of helping, or will you choose the harder, wiser path, one that protects your strength so that your love can endure? Because at the end of the day, the people who truly need you don't just need you today. They need you tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. Don't sacrifice yourself so completely that you disappear from their lives altogether. Boundaries are often misunderstood. People hear the word and immediately think of walls, of pushing others away, of coldness or distance. But boundaries are not walls, they are the opposite. They are the conditions that make closeness possible. Without boundaries, relationships collapse under confusion, resentment, and imbalance. With them, relationships have structure, clarity, and trust. Think about it in the simplest terms. A boundary is knowing where you end and another person begin. It's recognizing that you are responsible for your own choices just as they are responsible for theirs, and when you forget that, when you take on everything that belongs to someone else, you blur that line until neither of you can breathe. You are no longer helping them, you are drowning with them. Boundaries preserve dignity. When you say, this is what I can give and this is what I cannot, you're not pushing someone away, you're showing them the truth of who you are. And that truth allows trust to grow. People may not always like your boundaries, especially if they're used to you saying yes to everything, but over time, they will respect you more for them. Because boundaries communicate respect not only for yourself, but for the other person too. When you step in without boundaries, you rob people of their agency. You take away their responsibility for their own lives. You make yourself the savior, but in doing so, you treat them as helpless. And people are not helpless. They may be struggling, they may be weak, they may be lost, but they are not incapable of rising. If you constantly blur the lines by overstepping, you deny them the very chance to grow stronger. Healthy boundaries, on the other hand, invite maturity. They say, I will stand with you, but I will not live your life for you. They say, I love you enough to let you face your own consequences, even if it's painful. And that is love of the highest order, because it values truth over comfort and growth over dependency. It takes courage to set boundaries because you will be accused of being selfish. you will be tempted to feel guilty. You may lose people who only valued you for what you could give them, not for who you are. But what you gain is far more valuable: integrity, strength, and the possibility of relationships that are real. And here's the paradox. When you create boundaries, you don't diminish love. You deepen it. You no longer give from a place of exhaustion or resentment, but from a place of strength. Your yes actually means yes, because it's not polluted by hidden bitterness. Your no actually means no, because it's rooted in clarity and self-respect. And the people who truly love you, who truly want you in their lives, will adjust to those boundaries. In fact, they will begin to trust you more, because they will know that when you give, it is authentic. Boundaries save both lives, yours and theirs. They keep you from drowning in responsibility that was never yours to carry, and they keep the other person from being infantilized or weakened by your overreach. It may feel harsh at times, but it is one of the most compassionate acts you can perform. You were not meant to be a shield that absorbs every blow. You were meant to stand as a steady presence, strong, clear, and unshakable. And that strength comes from knowing where you end and where the other begins. Without that line, there is chaos. With it, there is order, and order is what allows love to flourish. So do not fear boundaries. They are not barriers to love. They are the very thing that protects it. And if you truly want to save both yourself and the person you care for, then draw those lines clearly. Because in the end, it is not endless sacrifice that sustains love. It is truth, strength, and the courage to stand firm. One of the hardest truths to accept is that sometimes the best way to help someone is by stepping back. Everything in us resists this idea because it feels like abandonment. We think, if I don't stay and fight for them, if I don't keep pouring myself into them, then I'm failing them. But that isn't always the case. In fact, many times, refusing to step back is what prevents true change from happening. When someone you love is caught in destructive patterns, whether it's addiction, self-sabotage, or endless cycles of chaos, your instinct is to intervene, to carry them, to pull them out of the pit with sheer force of will. And maybe for a while, that works. Maybe you soften a blow, or clean up a mess, or keep them from crashing. But if you do it long enough, you start to notice something. Nothing really changes. They lean on you more and more, and they learn less and less about how to stand on their own. You become their crutch, and in trying to save them, you help them remain the same. That's why stepping back isn't about abandonment. It's about responsibility, not just yours, but theirs. It's acknowledging that no matter how much you care, you cannot live someone else's life for them. You cannot make their choices. You cannot want their healing more than they do. And until they choose it for themselves, all of your sacrifice, all of your effort, will only delay the moment they finally confront reality. There is a deep humility in admitting this, because to step back, you must accept that you are not omnipotent. You are not the savior of every person you love. You are a finite human being with limits. And when you recognize those limits, you allow others to encounter their own. You give them the dignity of responsibility, and sometimes that moment of confrontation, when the safety net is gone, when the shield is lowered, is the only thing that will push them toward change. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you love in a different way. Instead of carrying them on your back, you stand beside them, steady and unmovable, refusing to be pulled into the quicks, and with them. You say, I am here when you are ready to rise, but I will not sink with you. That kind of love is far more powerful than endless rescue attempts, because it places the weight of responsibility exactly where it belongs. Stepping back can feel brutal. You will doubt yourself, you will wrestle with guilt, you will hear the voices, sometimes their voices, sometimes your own, that tell you you're cruel, that you don't care, that you've abandoned them. But in truth, stepping back is often the only way to truly care, because without it, the cycle never breaks. Without it, both of you drown. There is immense strength in knowing when to stay and when to step back. Strength in holding the line, even when it hurts. Strength in refusing to confuse enabling with love. It is a strength that doesn't always look compassionate in the moment, but in time, it often proves to be the deepest compassion of all. So don't be afraid to let go when holding on only destroys you. Don't mistake endless rescue for love. Sometimes love requires the courage to step back, to allow someone to face themselves and to wait, steady, unwavering, and strong, for the moment they choose to rise. Because only then, when the choice is theirs, can real transformation begin. There is a profound difference between the kind of help that empowers and the kind that destroys. On the surface, both may look the same. You give your time, your energy, your resources to someone who is struggling. But the outcomes could not be more different. One kind of help strengthens both of you. The other weakens you and keeps them stuck. And if you don't learn to tell the difference, you will spend your life exhausted, depleted, and confused about why all your effort never seems to make anything better. Empowered help begins with strength. It comes from a place of clarity, from a recognition of your limits and your values. When you help from that position, you're not rescuing out of guilt, fear, or obligation. You're offering something real, something sustainable. It's the difference between teaching someone to stand and carrying them forever. One creates independence, the other creates dependence, self. Destructive help, on the other hand, disguises itself as compassion. It whispers if you really cared, you would give more. If you really loved them, you would sacrifice yourself completely. And because you don't want to be selfish, you listen. You give beyond your capacity. You bend your own values. You silence your own needs. And at first, it feels virtuous. But slowly, it corrodes you. You begin to resent the very person you are trying to save, and worse, they don't grow. They remain trapped because your sacrifice has shielded them from reality. It's a hard truth, but sometimes helping can actually harm. Sometimes your endless giving keeps someone from confronting their own choices. Sometimes your self-destruction convinces them that the world will always bend to accommodate their chaos. And the tragedy is that you both suffer. You, because you're drained and bitter. Them, because they never learn to rise. Empowered help is different. It says, I will walk beside you, but I will not walk for you. It sets boundaries. It demands accountability. It refuses to confuse enabling with love. And because it is grounded in strength, it doesn't drain you. It nourishes you. When you give in this way, you feel alive, not depleted. You feel purposeful, not resentful, because you know your help is not destroying you or trapping them. It is pointing both of you toward growth. This doesn't mean empowered help is easy. Sometimes it means saying no. Sometimes it means letting someone face the consequences of their actions, even though everything in you wants to shield them. Sometimes it means standing still while they stumble, so that when they decide to rise, it is truly their decision, and that can feel brutal. But in the long run, it is the only way for real transformation to occur. You can think of it like a parent teaching a child to ride a bike. If you hold on forever, they never learn to balance. If you let go too soon, they might fall. But eventually, you must let go because the goal is not for you to carry them. The goal is for them to learn to ride. That is empowered help. That is love with wisdom, self. Destructive help will burn you out and break them down. Empowered help will strengthen you both. And that's the choice we each have to make. You can't save anyone by losing yourself. You can only save by standing strong, clear, and unwavering. Helping not from desperation, but from strength. So remember this. True help doesn't drown the helper, and it doesn't trap the one being helped. True help lifts both lives higher. That is the difference, and that difference can mean everything. At the heart of it all, the message is simple but not easy. You cannot save anyone by destroying yourself. The impulse to rescue is noble, but it must be tempered by wisdom. Just as you must put your own oxygen mask on first, you must learn to protect your strength, your energy, and your spirit before you can truly be of service to anyone else. Over-sacrifice only empties you and ultimately harms the very people you're trying to help. Boundaries are not walls. They are lifelines. They create the conditions for love to be genuine, for responsibility to be shared, and for growth to take root. And sometimes helping means stepping back, allowing someone to wrestle with their own choices, and standing firm while they learn to stand on their own. That is not abandonment. It is trust in their capacity to rise. The difference between empowered help and self-destructive help is the difference between lifting others up and pulling yourself under. One creates strength, the other creates ruin. So if you remember nothing else, remember this. Your life has value, and that value is not meant to be thrown away in the name of saving someone else. Protect your breath, guard your strength, set your boundaries, and know when to step back. Because only when you are strong, steady, and alive can you truly help another person. And that is the kind of help the world desperately needs.